So like many of you, I wear lots of different hats. So as has been said, my main job is working in a law centre in Harrow. And people always think Harrow, that's that leafy suburb where the posh school up the hill and there's no poverty there. What would you know in Harrow? Well, I can tell you it is. There's huge amounts of poverty. And when at the law centre, which I'm really proud of, we see people in real poverty, real extreme situations. We see people living in slums. We see people who haven't got food, who haven't got heating. We see people who have come over on boats claiming asylum. We see the journey that they've been on. We see young boys who've been abused on the way to get to the UK. We hear of people who've lost family members, who've drowned on boats because they've been put on different boats. And what I'm really proud of at the Law Centre is that we have a huge success rate. We have almost 100% success rate, even though we take really difficult cases. But the problem is, it's like a Band-Aid. It's dealing with the individual cases. It's not dealing with the causes that are there that allow people to live in slums. Why these young boys are forced to come on boats to claim asylum. They're not illegal migrants, they're legally claiming asylum. They're children, a lot of them, 16, 17, 18. And for anybody who's got children, you'd know how you might feel if your son or daughter was forced to take that journey. So I've seen quite a lot of initiatives happen, come and go. So the collective, how is that going to be different? About a year ago, longer than a year really, but a group of people came together who wanted to see a new left party, a left party based on class politics to be the overriding factor. And as Audrey has mentioned, that doesn't mean that you're going to ignore the issues of racism, sexism, and anything else. But those issues, those single issues, are used to divide us. And you think about the Labour Party now, they proudly claim that this is the most diverse government party, parliamentary Labour Party that we've ever had. Well, that's wonderful, isn't it? Look at what they're doing for us. Look at what they're doing for women. Look at what they're doing for race issues, immigration, for the disabled, for people who are sick. That's not enough. It's got to be a party that is rooted in class and sticks to that. So the collective, why can't we just get on with it and have a party now? I wish. But what we want is not to allow us to make the same mistakes as has happened by people who have really good intention, but it's failed. And so what we've done, the collective currently is a company, and I've seen some kind of attacks about that online from some on the left, it's inevitable. But a company has been set up. The company is not a party. The company is there so that we can actually take actions. So like when the general election was called, we were able to give funding to people, to get money and give funding. But the collective has, over the past year, been meeting weekly to bring the left together. And what the collective is comprised of are representatives from left groups, people who are already active in the community. And that ranges from established parties, long-established parties, to newer parties, to people who've got unstructured groups. So, for example, independent groups that are springing up in Enfield, Liverpool Independents, a whole range of those. In Harrow, we've got our independent group. So it's people who are already active. And the reason it's taken time is because some of the people involved feel that perhaps it's not the time, that we need to build the movement first, that we need to do more community work. But the problem with that is most of us have been working in our communities for decades. The movement is there. The movement has been there for decades. Now, if you think back to 2015, I know we're all so naive then, most of us. But anyway, back in 2015, the movement was there, desperate for some leadership. We'd even got a bit excited, some of us, forgive me, when Ed Miliband had become leader of the Labour Party, because it seemed like it was on the right trajectory. Now, when Jeremy put himself forward to be the leader, the movement was the thing that pushed him into the leadership. If the movement hadn't been there, he would not have become the leader of the Labour Party. It's not the other way round that Jeremy creates the movement. Now, the movement hasn't gone away. It's there, and it's desperate for some leadership. And that's what we need. We need, I'm afraid, ruthless leadership, class-based politics, and a democratic, truly democratic party. So we're on the way to that. But when the collective, and it may not be called the collective in the future, it will have democratic structures. We will not look around to say, oh, that person could be the leader. That person spoke well at a meeting and can be the leader. They will be elected democratically. And it may be somebody who's nobody has ever heard of. And that would be right. Because we need, people tell me young people are not involved in politics. Well, maybe it's because I've got two sons who, are very vociferous. But you only have to talk to young people to know that they are very involved and engaged in politics. They just might not like the way that it's done. So think about what is on offer, not just for young people. And I don't want to use that divide. We see that already. Pensioners have had it, they're the only ones who maintain their income. It's rubbish. That's always used to divide us. But if you think what's on offer for people now, housing, people are paying a fortune for rented property, not knowing if they've got any security. They can only dream about purchasing a property. And if they do, it'll be some scheme like share ownership, which is not great, to be honest. So what's come about with Labour? Some people said, well, we'll have to give them a chance, don't we? We do. Well, I'll tell you, Labour weren't much cop the last time they were in power. So we hear people saying there's an attack on disabled people now. There's an attack on benefits. There's a tax here, the work capability assessment, Labour not getting rid of. Well, Labour introduced the work capability assessment. They introduced the bedroom tax in the private sector. They introduced the most horrendous immigration laws of our time. They introduced the concept that asylum seekers could no longer be treated as human beings. They were to be moved away from London and the southeast, and they've been moved to the northern towns and cities where people already had their industries destroyed. They already were under attack where things like incapacity benefit, like lots of people were living on at that time, was removed. So we have the kind of the setting for the Tories to come in 2010. It was already bad. There's no kind of looking back to the Labour days and everything was wonderful. It wasn't. I've worked in this field for decades and I've seen people in poverty. Things like Polish women under the right to reside test that was introduced by Labour, having to go back to work days after giving birth because otherwise they wouldn't qualify for any benefits, would lose housing benefit, etc. So we need to do something. So for those people who are saying we need to organise more, we need to spend time building the movement, I think they're not aware, genuinely not aware of what is going on around us. We don't have that luxury. Nobody has that time. If we've got another 5 years of austerity, and that is what Labour is promising us, then where are we going to be at the next general election? And that's just domestic politics. Look at what's happening in Gaza. We hear people saying, oh, well, we've got to have a two-state solution. We've got to have this. How is it our role to decide what happens to the people of Palestine? They should have self-determination. I cannot see how a so-called two-state solution is possible now. But we wake up every day and we see the most horrific things going on. And it's made so much worse by our politicians, our media, telling us that what we see is not true, that the people who are suffering are really the ones who are the bad guys. What is going on that we are not able to challenge our politicians and our media? Now, Labour, it's always been bad. I was a member of Labour because I felt it was the only real vehicle that you could affect any change for working class people. And I confess to being happy in May 1997. I confess I was. But it lasted a matter of months when they then introduced rules to cut benefit for single parents and then the rules for asylum seekers. They are not going to do it for us. They are just not. They didn't do it under Blair, who was very right-wing but fairly competent. We have now the most incompetent Labour government I have ever known, and the most authoritarian. And the two go hand in hand, because if you're confident, if you've got ideas, you can persuade people. You know, think about Obama. He was a master at that, wasn't he? At persuading people. Blair was quite good at it as well. Starmer is absolutely hopeless. And there's nobody in his cabinet that has any kind of qualities at all. And so we're in for a pretty rough time. So we need a new party, a new left party, a party that is not going to take any prisoners, is going to be absolutely saying it as it is not going to bow to the media, the right-wing media, is not going to accept allegations against us. We've all been there, we've all done it, haven't we? We're not naive anymore. We're not going to do that. We need a party that is ready, and we aim to do that by early next year. And then members... Sorry. It will be the members who determine the policies of that party and the structures. And I can tell you one thing I will ensure, if I have any role, that people who work for that party will be treated properly as well. Because something happens to Labour staffers, doesn't it? Has anybody noticed? They go in quite young and sometimes idealistic, and they come out the most horrible people. So you have to treat people well. I believe in doing that in the law centre I work in. So that's it, really. I'm happy to answer questions and talk further, but we need to be strong. We need to be revolutionary. We need to stop taking this nonsense. It's too much, no more.
So before I talk about the future, I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience this last year. So just over a year ago, I volunteered to be a local organiser in Leicester. And one of the first things I did was go out there and start talking to our activists. I got invited to the local Tusk branch meeting. There's about 7 people there, and not all of them Tusk members. And the first thing I noticed was that I agreed with everything people were saying. And then I also noticed that everybody else agreed with what everybody was saying. I thought, well, this is interesting. This should be easy, right? I should be able to. And I said to Steve Score, who was chairing, I said, look, why don't we get all the left-wing groups in Leicester together and have a conversation about the looming election coming up? And everybody agreed. And we were going to do it the next month. It would take a little bit of time to organise. Anyways, nothing happened. Right? So no one responded, nothing happened. And this was the norm. And I'm sure all of you can attest to this kind of behaviour. This was the norm. Everyone I went out to, spoke with, everybody agreed with the same issues. We were all against the genocide that was taking place. We were all against the austerity, but nobody wanted to get together. Everybody had their own little pockets, little groups that they retreated to. So fast forward a year, and all of us, I don't need to necessarily go into too much detail, all of us have experienced this trauma, this live stream genocide that we've kind of seen. I try to avoid it now. I've got to be honest. It's really difficult to watch little kids with their faces blown off being treated in hospitals, or parents carrying around their kids in plastic carry bags. Now, aside from the genocide, obviously there's a whole bunch of other things that have been going on that comrades have already mentioned, whether it's floods around the world, fires. We've got the race riots only last summer, another one again. This never-ending inflation. I don't talk about it. And for those of us who are on a lower income, this is a huge deal. There's blatant profiteering that's going on, right? This is not an equal thing happening to everybody. There's blatant profiteering going on. Our rights to protest, they're being smashed. We've got Roger Hallam, who I was only talking to a few months ago and had a fantastic conversation. He's in prison for what? For being on a Zoom call to discuss how to organize a disruptive but peaceful protest in the same lines, and probably less disruptive than what the suffragettes were doing, right? So I could go on about all the other things that have been going on, including, like, what are Starmer and co doing? Well, they're filling their boots right now, aren't they? We can see only just the tip of the iceberg of what journalists have been able to uncover. But those millions that hedge funds are providing them isn't just going on advertising, right? Now, I genuinely think, and I've said this to a few people before, this is the first time in my life, my 40 plus years, that I've been a little bit scared. And I think, and I'm feeling this feels a bit like 1932. And one of the things that I keep saying is that the right are not on the rise. They have risen. They're in government. And worst of all, right, if they fail, there's another group, Reform, they're waiting in the wings. They're in third place. They're not like when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, BNP, nobody really took much notice of them, right? They were horrible people, but they were not going to get anywhere. Reform are genuinely in a position where they might realistically get into power. Now, that naive aspiration that I had around this time last year, sitting in a hall in Leicester, asking if the local left groups are going to get together. The thing that I'm asking now is that same question, but at a national level. Can we sit together and can we form a genuinely mass party for the left that's democratic? Now, comrades, I think the answer isn't just yes. The answer is we must do it. It's not a yes, we have to do it. Because by 1939, it was too late. The fascists had got into power and we all know what happened next. So this is not a should we, is we have to do it. So I also ask, why are we already not one party? And I keep asking to myself, don't we all believe in social justice? Don't we all want to end poverty, to end homelessness, to end racism? Don't we all want a national health service? Don't we want to save our environment? Don't we all believe in human rights? And do we not all want to end genocide? The answer to that is obvious. It's yes, we all want to do these things. This hasn't happened, right? And why not? And I think it's because we don't sit together often enough. We don't talk to each other often enough, if at all. And I think the only way forward is to carry on talking to each other, as we're doing. We have to find time to stand with each other in solidarity, in movements that we might not have heard about. I was really impressed with Fiona over there as a Bangladeshi when the crisis in Bangladesh kicked off and hundreds of students were being killed because they wanted democracy back in their country. Very few people were aware of it outside of the Bangladeshi community, right? So we need to stand with each other on these causes. We have to build relationships and we have to build solidarity wherever we can and wherever possible. We have to have awkward conversations with each other. And if we disagree, what we need to do is come back with better arguments, if necessary. And if somebody has a better argument, we have to learn to concede. Right? We can't hold on to our position. There are, in my view, right, we've got to be dogged in our determination for a mass party of the left. It's not going to be easy, right? It's not going to be rooms filled with people all the time. And when we start, it's going to be slow and hard, right? There's some people who think we're going to instantly get a mass party, a collective get together. I'm pessimistic. I think it's going to be hard work. Yeah. And if we do, the media are going to be attacking us. It's going to be hard work all the way. But freedom has never been easy. Now, lastly, I want to think about, well, what might the future look like? The future of the left. I don't know exactly. I'm notoriously bad at predicting things. But someone, let's say, and I've been mentioned before, they want a party now, some want a movement, others are focusing on direct action and citizens' assemblies. And one of the things I've noticed is that there seems to be this tension between all of these groups and as to the reason why we can't have this party now, which for me seems really odd because I don't see why we can't have all of those things right now. Why can't we do all of these things in parallel? It seems to be a non-issue to me. If you want to start a movement, brilliant. My answer to that question, you say, look, well, we want to do a movement. My answer is, how can we help? If you want to go out and protest about a local issue, maybe a library closing down, my answer to that is, how can we help? If you want to go on a march for Palestine, my answer is, how can we help? If you, for whatever you want to do, our issue should not be how to, excuse my French, to shit on it, right? It's not to bring it down and go, oh, this is not a good idea, maybe not right now. Our answer should always be, how can I help? And if you want to start a national party, genuine mass party of the left, comrades, conference, our answer should be, how can we help?